Why are director's cuts important? Sure, they're often a marketing tool designed to sell new copies of an already familiar thing, but what if there's something else entirely? What if a prominent director never finished their vision, but, coded in the studio's theatrical release of this film, existed an entirely different film, not made by the giant media conglomerate, but by a singular artist with something lasting to say about our world? In this case, we're talking about Justice League, and the long-rumored cut by its original director, Zack Snyder. From cast and crew testimony, this cut, even if only as a work in progress, might not just exist, it might, as they claim, be the better film.
Maybe it's just hearsay, okay? Or maybe buried inside one of the most expensive movies of all time is a better movie.
Despite that, the mythical Snyder Cut is important to understanding the complex dynamics between filmmakers, studios, and fans. So we wanted to investigate what could possibly be learned from this dumpster fire. This is The Breakdown.
It all started at the turn of the millennium.
I don't know that you need to do that voice.
Okay, sometimes it makes me feel comfortable, but
I could use my speaking voice.
It's a regular voice.
Okay. Big budget studios began to drift away from original content in favor of reboots, reimaginings, and remakes.
Horror. The emergence of online message boards and blogs became the battleground for public opinion and began deciding the success of movies.
What do you mean by that?
I'll tell you later.
This shift brought on large films that would have a pre-existing fan base to better secure guaranteed box office results. Encouraged by the surprise success of X-Men in 2000, studios were quick to greenlight superhero films based on this new goldmine. But DC, having been there, done that, with Superman and Batman, would spend the next several years in an effort to establish their presence in the cinematic landscape.
I'm Batman.
A major setback struck DC films with the Justice League fiasco of 2007. The George Miller-directed superhero team-up film was canceled mere days before shooting was to begin. Reasons given? The writer's strike and lack of tax credits, though industry insiders speculate WB was skittish on muddying the waters with Christopher Nolan's wildly successful Dark Knight films. A series of other failures surrounded the film on either side: Green Lantern, Superman Returns, and Jonah Hex.
Wouldn't you?
In 2011, Christopher Nolan was charged with spearheading a reimagining of the Superman story with Man of Steel. He hired filmmaker Zack Snyder to direct the film.
Intending Snyder's distinct visual style and success with films like Dawn of the Dead and 300 to be a good pairing. The finished film, Man of Steel, was a critical and box office success, but a contingent online viewed it as a betrayal of the Superman mythos.
Look, not everyone's going to like everything. Some people might not like this video. Let's move on.
Nevertheless, DC greenlit Snyder's pitch for a large 5-film cinematic universe, intended to follow Joseph Campbell's approach to storytelling, with Superman as the hero and spin-off films serving as mirror/influencers to this overall story arc. Following the release of Batman vs. Superman, anti-Snyder sentiments reached a fever pitch.
A lot of online sites started calling for his immediate firing. Some called for his murder.
Is that true?
Yeah, do a Control F on Twitter, baby.
November 17th, 2017, moviegoers went into Justice League with fervent anticipation.
People went in expecting to just have some good old popcorn chomping fun. Instead, what they got was
brunch.
My man. No.
Brunch. We might not have thought this through.
Justice League was a mess. It did not feel like a Zack Snyder film. The style and tone of previous films were lost. Some odd Frankenstein's monster was in its place.
The mystery was set, but the players were nowhere to be seen.
Justice League had a tragic setback in May of 2017, when Snyder announced he was stepping away from the post-production of the film to spend more time with his family following the recent suicide of his daughter. Let's take a break here so we can say this is a tragedy beyond our comprehension, beyond any parent's comprehension. Take care of your mental health and don't hesitate to ask for help. You are not alone. Principal photography on the Justice League film had wrapped, and Snyder, known for storyboarding meticulously, completed shooting the entire script as planned. With Snyder out, WB commissioned fan favorite and Buffy the Vampire Slayer creator Joss Whedon to complete minor reshoots of the film. PR from cast and WB execs confirm only 10 to 20% of Snyder's film was altered/changed in the finished film.
This was the story the studio fronted. This was the narrative they were trying to spin. But that narrative was a lie. Something happened in the 5 months after Snyder's departure.
Snyder never came back to the project. He deleted all references to Justice League from his Twitter account and did not take part in the promotions for the film. Many creatives behind the scenes were replaced. Cast removed references to Snyder during the PR campaign. Evidence, rumor, and inference soon added up for the existence of a mythic 3.5-hour cut of Justice League by Zack Snyder.
Look, we're not here to argue whether or not a Snyder Cut exists. For one, I already told you a studio can do whatever they want. But since we're here, let's dig. Because once we start digging, something doesn't feel right.
The clues. ADR, usually scheduled with major talent once the film is picture locked, had been underway as early as January of 2017. Time code from this photograph indicates the shot took place at the 2 hours and 9 minutes mark, with the footage indicating it at the very least comes prior to the third act. The official runtime for Justice League, 1 hour and 59 minutes. Large special effects sequences seen in trailers were missing from the film. Plot lines were abandoned and substituted with voiceover recaps, while new footage was added to fill the holes. A-list cast members such as John Cleese, Ray Porter, Robin Wright, Willem Dafoe, and Kiersey Clemens, announced to great fanfare and even showcased in promotional material, were never seen in the finished film. This is far and above the purview of minor reshoots and points toward a significant reworking of the picture.
Did the studio want Snyder gone before he left the project? I don't know, I'm just asking.
The final box office of Batman vs. Superman was impressive, but the internet turned against it and its lesser spin-off, Suicide Squad, ensuring their failure. Even before either film came out, rhetoric had turned against Snyder for his perceived crimes against these beloved characters.
As though he were the first to reimagine comic book characters.
I'm Batman.
Following the release of Batman vs. Superman, WB execs gave indications they were course-correcting the DCEU. Comic book veteran Jeff Johns was put in charge of DC films and specifically set out to lighten and brighten the upcoming movies. Reshoots were ordered for both Wonder Woman and Suicide Squad to inject more humor and lightness,
While the 2-film Justice League order was shortened to 1.
for the time being. The studio's point of view, the fans had spoken, and by giving the fans what they wanted, the future of the DCEU would be brighter. Justice League had been written and scheduled to start filming days after the release of Batman vs. Superman. But when the backlash came, production was halted, so Snyder could do a complete rewrite. Information soon came out that following Snyder's departure, a team of writers, including Joss Whedon, Jeff Johns, Alan Heinberg, Seth Grahame-Smith, and Andrea Berloff, were brought in to significantly rework the existing script and footage.
Well, I knew you didn't bring me back because you like me.
I don't. Not. Whedon's marching orders as director: make the film under 2 hours, lighten the tone and the visuals.
I think that was beautiful.
Creatives behind the scenes were fired and replaced for the extensive reshoots.
Whedon's extensive reshoots with Henry Cavill made headlines due to the shoddy CGI necessary to remove the facial hair he grew for Mission Impossible. Watching the film, the weird upper lip never goes away.
Oh, baby.
This may be conjecture, but think about it. We know the team of writers was brought in to rework the script at the 11th hour. We know that a huge percentage of the film was changed. We know that Snyder hasn't returned to DC. We know Jeff Johns and the studio discussed course correcting months prior to Snyder's departure. It adds up to something questionable. Why fire the original storyboard artist, the original DP, the original composer, crew members contractually obligated to return for reshoots? You could argue that Joss Whedon thought it would be better. Sure, that's fair. Or that they needed to get the Snyder loyalists out of the way. A clean, creative slate.
Does that sound like a bunch of coincidences to you, Mr. Garrison?
There was something deeper, uglier.
I never realized Snyder was such a danger to the public.
The rest is just scenery. Why was Snyder killed? Who benefited? Who has the power to cover it up?
The answer is obvious. The studio. Like we said, that's their prerogative. From their point of view, fans had previously turned on them. And afraid of angering the online community again, they spent millions of dollars and fired a bunch of people to do it.
Can these vocal fans actually steer major studio decisions? Oh, sorry, I was asking you. I actually don't know. You don't know either?
No, I don't know.
It'd be great if we could get some info on that.
Meow?
The studios began to listen, and orders were handed down to give the fans what they want. Although studios are good at making movies, it is directors, the writers, the artists who audiences typically put their trust in to tell them stories, not the studio. Despite our indifference towards Snyder, the evidence is clear. The studio was wrong.
They could have trusted Snyder's vision, kept all the same creatives, and doubled down on his artistic choices. But instead, they gave in to fear, cleaned the slate, and made a decision that cost them dearly.
Justice League film. Release date, November 17th, 2017. Runtime, 120 minutes. Reshoot budget, $70 million. Total budget, $300+ million. Final worldwide gross, $657.9 million. Video sales, $58.3 million. Failure. And those angry tweets? Still angry. Hollywood seems like a cold, inaccessible place. Assistants make less than a living wage. A town where a studio would fire you and your friends at the worst possible times, all because of some words on Twitter. The hashtag Release the Snyder Cut campaign began 2 hours after the premiere of Justice League and has since made massive waves, elevating to pop culture status. I'm going to pivot for a moment to introduce you to an artist you probably never heard of. These are the works of American artist Joseph Cornell, one of the pioneers and perhaps most celebrated advocates of assemblage, works of art made by grouping found or unrelated objects. Cornell improvised his original style incorporating cast-off and discarded artifacts. Described in a monograph by Charles Simic as, somewhere in the city of New York, there are 4 or 5 still unknown objects that belong together. Once together, they'll make a work of art. That's Cornell's premise, his metaphysics, and his religion. This is to say, an artist like Cornell is perhaps the purest kind of artist, an artist creating art for art's sake. To compare Cornell to Snyder would be foolish, but bear with me. Cornell intended these objects to be interacted with, to be explored with our hands. When I think about watching the Snyder Cut, I imagine what it would be like to hold one of Cornell's pieces, exploring their latches to discover something I couldn't see through the glass pane of its display. A secret right there in front of me. We'll probably never get to hold one of Cornell's boxes, and that's a shame, because he wanted you to. This helpless feeling, not being able to interact with these rather obscure works of assemblage, reminds me of what it feels like to watch Justice League. It's like going to a gallery to visit Joseph Cornell's work and view it through a pane of glass. I know there's more to it, but I will never be able to see and experience the whole thing. What is evident, though, is that this mythical Snyder Cut is exemplary of the relationship media conglomerates and their consumers have. It speaks to this tension in our ever-changing world, a world where individuals on either side of this relationship are trying to navigate how we consume media and how we make it. The concerns and desires of the artist have always weighed against audiences' tastes. But now with fandom at an all-time high, audiences have such a big say in their creation, not just through choosing where to put their dollars, but how they interpret the stories themselves. The masses will have their cake. Tell the chef how they want it made, what ingredients to use, and the chef will listen. Because it's such a big cake. He doesn't have a choice, and they'll eat it, whether they like it or not.
I don't want any, thank you.
But this is no way to make a cake.
Eat it.
I hope one day the Snyder Cut is released, or at least some version of it, even if for posterity's sake. But the truth is, the Snyder Cut may not be the pure vision of an artistic director Snyder fans wish for. It's certainly more than an assembly cut, but with all the required post-production elements needed to complete an additional hour and a half of mega movie, how could its completion be viable at this point? It's sad to consider that an era of filmmaking may have been lost. Uniform popcorn entertainment continues to rise with critics and box office alike, while variation and strong artistic direction is denigrated. Safety in the familiar, comfort in the ordinary, a copy of a copy, till eventually the copies only serve to highlight what's underneath.
Nothing.
All right, y'all, if we can get people excited enough, maybe we'll release the 3.5-hour cut of this video. This is The Breakdown. Thanks for watching.
like a single woman and you saw this, would you think that, hey, that guy being interviewed sounds like really cool. Like maybe I want to ask him out on a date somewhere.
Sure.
Great. Thanks so much, man.